All right, thanks for having me today. I'm excited to talk about the job market and transitioning into academia, whether it be a postdoc or a academic position. Um, I'm not sure if you all can hear that. That is my 2-year-old in the background. So we can also talk about life, right? In the academic world. Um, so to begin, I was really thinking about just kind of an overview of what's out there, right? So you are in graduate school there's a lot of clinical and counseling psychology folks. So you may be going into doing an internship, you're finishing your dissertation, and you're thinking what's next, right? And under the academic umbrella, there are a multitude of options. There are postdocs, which are typically temporary research focused positions. Postdocs can vary and can have different requirements or job responsibilities, but most typically they are research focused. They also can have teaching and can be teaching focused as well. They range from 1 to 3 years, and in recent years, it seems that people also stack them. So they may do 2 postdocs before going into an academic position because they want to best position themselves for a particular geographic region or for a particular type of institution. So in my journey, I went from undergrad to graduate school. And after graduate school, I said, I need a postdoc. I do not want to go right to the tenure grind. I would like a postdoc to really regroup, figure out where I want to go, scholarly, where does my scholarly identity lie after these years of training, and to breathe a bit and to get a little more experience in a new institution. So my postdoc was 2 years, and it was research focused on a project sponsored by the William T. Grant Foundation. And I was also able to teach as a part of the postdoc. And so it wasn't required, but it was an opportunity. So I used that opportunity to actually develop my own course, so that going into an academic job, I could have a course already developed. And, I wasn't brand new at it. I tried something to take with me to the market. And so that's kind of the postdoc realm. And then there's tenure and non-tenure track jobs within universities. Typically, your tenure track position, you will get 5 to 7 years, depending on the institution. So typically, you hear about 6 years to tenure. Exactly when you go up for tenure will vary by institution. At my institution, your materials go in at the end of your 5th year. A colleague of mine is at an institution not 30 minutes away, and her materials go in at the end of her 6th year. So about 5 to 7 years to write, to collect data, to publish, to teach, to do service, and become a, well-known and respected person in your field, right? That you've made a contribution to how we know and understand psychology. There are also non-tenure track positions, which can vary a lot by institution. There are temporary non-tenure track positions and more permanent contract. So typically in this space, you'll focus either on research or teaching. In non-tenure track teaching positions, you can have kind of one-offs where you're hired to teach a course for a semester or a set of courses across the year, but it's very temporary. It has to be renewed every single year. There also are institutions that have kind of like 3-year contracts. So you're hired to teach a certain amount of courses over 3 years, and it's up for renewal, but there's a little more permanency. In these positions, depending on your department, the institution, you can sometimes do research, but that is not what you're paid to do primarily. And so if you want a research career, that's not typically the easiest way to have time to make that happen. I do know and have colleagues that do it, but they're supposed to teach 4 classes a semester. And so that does make that a much more challenging task. There are also research-focused non-tenure track positions that it is research. You are not teaching anything. Some of these positions can be funded within the department, but more than likely they're soft money, which means you're writing grants to fund your salary. But the institution is providing those, like you have office space, you have internet, you have access to the libraries, you have access to graduate students, right? You have the infrastructure and resources to do the research. But your salary and benefits, you are funding yourself. So I myself went into a tenure track position. So my distribution is 40% research, 40% teaching, 20% service. That is what it's supposed to look like in my calendar. And so basically, I'll kind of talk through some strategies that I've used and some I wish I used to make those shifts from each space. Because at least for tenure track positions, you need to write, and you need to write well, and you need to teach, and you need to teach reasonably well, and you want to be a good citizen in your department, in the university, and in the field. So going from graduate school to the postdoc is really an opportunity to say, okay, here I am, I'm at a new institution usually. Do I really want to do this academia thing, right? And my biggest strategy for both, to jump to both spaces, is to backwards plan. So this is a strategy I use a little more efficiently in my tenure track position, but I also recommend it for the postdoc. And that's to look at your CV and say, what do I need to be most marketable for the job of my dreams? And if that's an academic kind of tenure track position and you want a R1 university, and you know, okay, the last couple of people they hired over there had 5 pubs, I have 2, then I need to get 3 publications while I'm on this job market, right? And so you look at your calendar and say, if I have to get 3 publications out by this date, when does the first one need to be out? How many days do I have to get each publication out? Right? So you can kind of backwards plan. And then you say, okay, what are my options? And there's a couple of options for really hitting the ground running with writing. The first, most obvious one is your dissertation. Get that thing out in some articles. Maybe 1 solid article. Perhaps there's 2 solid articles within that dissertation. And a lot of universities now have the 3 pub style. So there may even be 3 articles that you make sure are out. The next space, or another space, is secondary data. So there are large data sets that are publicly available that you can write from, right? So that's data that you don't have to collect. The third option are systematic lit reviews or meta-analyses. So taking a topic that there's a substantive amount of research about that nobody has synthesized before, and saying, I'm going to take the time to synthesize this literature in a systematic way and write a paper on it. The good thing about those types of papers are when you have a topic that's truly never been done before, it'll be well cited because you've done the legwork for everybody. You've pulled together all the patterns and trends in that field. And it's not something that you need to go and have participants for. So it could be also something that you work on while you're collecting new data. And then the fourth option is data related to your new postdoc. And depending on the postdoc, that can look very different. Some postdocs are connected to larger projects and have data ready for you to jump in with. Other postdocs are newer projects or have a new arm that you're connected to. And so that data may take a while before it can actually become products. So those are kind of the way I think about strategic options at the beginning of any of these stages, the beginning of the postdoc or the beginning of a academic position. That's kind of data and publications. And then there's grant writing. And one of the, especially in the postdoc, grant writing can be an excellent opportunity for a second postdoc that allows you to really, oh, there's a question. I'll answer the question before I go on to grants. Okay, Dr. Hope, thank you for explaining these types of jobs. Do you suggest seeking a job coach to assist with applying for a new faculty position? The process seems daunting. I will say that I think about coaches in academia in the same way I think about personal trainers. There are some folks who can get it together, go through the YouTubes, sort through everything, find their exercise plan and implement it. They can get to the gym and they can do it. And there are other folks like me who need someone to tell them when to go to the gym, to be there to make sure they show up, and to give them a plan to execute. And so I think that is the same approach I would take to job coaches and even dissertation coaches. If you need the extra support to get through that hurdle, use it. Okay. Yeah, excellent question. Yes. Okay, so grant writing in your postdoc. So there are a number of federally funded and even foundation funded postdocs that you can use to springboard your academic career. NSF has postdocs in social and behavior science. NIH has the K Awards or the Kangaroo Awards. And these can be excellent awards to collect your own data and truly begin that independent scholarship, right? Because one of the challenges in shifting from graduate school into your own independent scholarship is that you're supposed to eventually stop writing with your mentors, right? You can finish up projects. You want to finish up what you've got going in the pipeline because you don't want to abandon papers, and there's still papers for your CV and they're still part of your narrative, your research contributions. But depending on where you go, institutions have different levels and varying degrees to which writing with your mentor as you're your own independent scholar is okay. They want to see that you have an independent contribution. And so with things like the NIH and the Kangaroo Awards, you can get the money and funding to collect your own data, your own independent scholarship. And with the NIH Kangaroo Award, you also get the money to fund your salary in your tenure-track position. So you can have, which can give you a humongous leg up. You can buy out of teaching. You can have money for graduate students. You can have funding for conferences and professional development, right? You can have a lot of resources financially available to you that can assist with smoothing out that transition. Instead of needing to hustle and look for ways to figure it out in that first couple of years, you have that already figured out. And during the postdoc, you have time to really think and get mentors to look over drafts and really think through your ideas, because that's all you're doing is research. So you can spend days crafting a very strong application. And also internal funding, looking for those opportunities within the university for small pockets of money. You know, a couple $1,000s here, a couple $1,000s there can go a long way for participant incentives, can go a long way for transcription, paying for research assistant time, right? Because we all want to pay everyone well for their time and their work and the like. So I think those were my major strategies, just thinking about the transition part. I'm happy to take questions. And during the next session next week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that kind of self-care, living life while you also pursue this industry, this career type stuff.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hope. There's another question asking, is there a group of students or meetings or resources you would recommend to know more about students who are in this phase? In other words, how can I learn ways to get into the door, such as the important information you're mentoring? I think I need way more knowledge in this area. Would a support group be helpful?
I don't know. So, okay, there's one resource that came to mind immediately, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure any other actual student resources. So one are all of these mentoring talks, right? And the other for Black students in psychology, there is the BGCP, so Black Graduate Conference in Psychology, where there are a lot of mentors who are invested in sharing this type of information and speaking with students. It's a graduate student conference only. There's no faculty research presentations, but there's faculty panels and talks. So the students talk about their research and the faculty give feedback. Then the faculty do the professional development.
Okay, thank you. I guess another question I have is, so because I see graduate school as relatively more structured, we have expectations. And when we're transitioning into maybe less so in postdoc, more in tenure-track position, the structure kind of have to be developed by ourselves. So
Yep.
do you have any tips for how we can help with this transition, maybe even in graduate school, so they're not going to be like a total shock of what am I going to do with my time, with everything I need to accomplish within this time frame?
Yes, I have a few. So a few of these I've learned from Karye Rockmore's National Center for Faculty Diversity and Development, something like that. And a few of these I've adapted and kind of figured out on my own. So I am the queen of a spreadsheet. I like to organize everything into some sort of easily trackable plan. So I have a couple of spreadsheets that I think are critical. One is my manuscript spreadsheet. I have the title, the date that I would like to submit it by, and I determine that date according to my backwards plan. So if for tenure I need 3 publications a year, that means I need to be submitting every couple of months, right? Mm-hmm. So I need a first author paper every so often. I put the first journal that I would like to submit it to. I put alternative journals in case that journal rejects me. Mm-hmm. I put the data set that I'm using and any of my co-authors. And so I keep track of the journals that are under review, the journals that have been accepted as a nice reminder that I can do it. And I also keep the journals that have been rejected, the articles that have been rejected, those under review and those in progress. I do that. And then I also have the section of the spreadsheet that's the ideas. So I can keep what's next. And every couple of months, and really every week, I'm revising that spreadsheet. This, article got an R&R, so now I need to work on that. Or this article, the analyses didn't work out, so that needs to shift, right? You can move them around, you can organize, and you can think through strategically what are the questions I'm answering in my program of research, and you just kind of see it all right there. So you may not be a spreadsheet person per se, but some sort of way. And also to keep your ideas, right? So I can go there and put the different paper ideas that I have. And sometimes I've gone back and I've said, those 3 ideas are really similar. That's a paper. But then I move it up and that becomes the paper, right? Or I may get feedback from a reviewer that says that my paper is missing something, or have I considered X or Y? And I go, yeah, I considered it. It's a different idea, but now I can address that and keep it going. The other strategy I use is on the daily basis. I have writing meetings and I block them off and I do everything in my power not to schedule anything else during them. And so I think that's a key point. So during the postdoc, I met with different groups of people to write. Mm-hmm. And those are appointments. Those were research meetings, right? That I had to be at to get my work done. And I continue that into tenure-track. I set up I have virtual meetings. So I meet with a group of younger scholars. We're all on the tenure-track. About twice a week this semester. And then I meet with another group on campus once a week. And then I meet just one-on-one with a colleague. We came in the exact same semester. And we actually ended up collaborating. So we work on our collaborations during that time. So they're in my calendar and people say, oh, are you free Thursday afternoon? No, I'm not. I have a 3-hour writing block because otherwise I won't get tenure and then I'll be useless. No, well, not completely useless. I'll be useless in the terms of if my goal is to continue to diversify the academy and to continue to be a resource to my students and to continue to make the scholastic contributions that I hope to make. Mm-hmm. I won't reach that goal if I do, because typically the things we want you to meet about are service. And that's only 20% of my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those tips. And
there's another question.
Yes, there's another question. The question was, have you done peer reviews? Do you recommend this? And which journal would you suggest, if any?
Yes, I highly recommend starting to do peer reviews, especially as you're more senior in graduate school. Some journals, you can always start with our journal, Culture, Diversity, Ethnic Minority Psychology, CDEMP. I think basically depending on your niche areas, there may be some kind of smaller journals that may be more amenable to student reviewers. You may also ask your advisors or mentors, would they be comfortable allowing you to do a co-review? Mm-hmm. So an article that they've received, you review it, they review it, and then your mentor basically talks to you about what they saw, what you saw, and you write up that review together. Those are always good ways. I believe my mentors were recommending my name. I started getting asked to do reviews in graduate school. And so even just letting people know that that's something you want to do. And sometimes if we can't review a paper, they'll say, do you have any other names? And then we can give your names. And say, these are other experts that may be able to review these papers. Highly recommend it. You will see a variety of what people turn in. And that sometimes can give you hope and sometimes can give you goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's something that I think a lot of graduate students like us may not think about, like how much that would mean, and then how much that kind of becomes part of the tenure-track services. Like you do.
Yes. And you can't do everyone, right? You do, because you have to get your own work out, but there often are papers that are right kind of in the things that I'm thinking about. And it's useful to review those papers because you see how other folks are thinking about it. And you can see some of the whole. Sometimes you can help make the work better. It's a great process. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
I'm curious about like the whole grant application thing, because it is my understanding if you're at one university, you kind of expected to at least apply to multiple grants.
Yeah.
Grants are always very competitive, especially for early career faculty. I'm just curious, like, how do you manage that? Like the pressure and also the expectations and also the entire process as it kind of adds to the structure you may already have with writing and publishing.
Yeah, so I know people who take a couple of approaches, right? So I have a colleague who basically stopped writing manuscripts for an academic year and solely focused on a couple big grants, mm-hmm. and focused on them, had so much feedback from mentors because people who are at your mentor stage are the people who judge the grants. They've sat on these granting committees and done the reviews. And he focused in hard to get that grant to perfection, and got it, right? $1 million NSF grant. Mm-hmm. That worked out. Other people feel like that's too many eggs in one basket, and kind of go a different route with maybe smaller ones, or trying to be co-PIs first to learn more. Generally, I say try to find the foundations or federal agencies that really align with your work, and see if you can get examples. See if mentors or peers have been successful. Look in there. Pretty much every agency has a list of the people they've funded, and see who has done anything in the area that I'm thinking about. Who do I know? And can you get some examples, or would they be willing to review your application before you send it out? And then you just got to try. You just have to try. I recently got a Spencer Foundation small grant, and it was my third submission, but I tried right out the bat. First semester of my tenure-track position, did not get it. The second one, they liked it, but they needed a couple of changes. And then I made the changes and I got the third one, right? And so it's kind of really that experience of learning how to write. It's a different style of writing than the dissertation and manuscripts. You're not kind of regurgitating the literature and then saying what you did, but you're really making a case for the important contribution of your work, and how that important contribution aligns. And I have another example of a failure where I was applying to a foundation and I wasn't making the case for the alignment to the foundation. They said, we think this is a great project. We think your data analysis plan is solid, but it doesn't align with our mission. Mm-hmm. Right? There's another question. Do any peer-reviewed journals pay? I don't think so. Editors, right? So if you're at the level of editor, but it's considered service to the field typically. So editors can negotiate some payment, because that's a lot of work to coordinate all that. And editors have to read every single one. But typically for a journal, you may be reviewing one a year. It shouldn't take you more than an hour or two. If you're on the board for a journal, you may review 3 to 6 or maybe a little bit more, but you're not, there's a sad face. Yeah, and that's a conversation. Maybe we can ask some senior mentors to speak on peer review. Where is it going? Where has it been? And maybe, where we think it should go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll put the journal website in the chat box. Well, I'll just put the name of it because I don't know the website.
Thank you.
That's the Division 45 journal.
Thank you. And I guess I'm curious about what is the process like for getting on the editor board of a journal, and how much does it contribute to the tenure track? Because I've seen faculty kind of sitting as assistant editor, associate editor, or ad hoc reviewers and things like that.
Yeah, so it varies journal by journal. But typically you'll be asked to kind of be on the editorial board, which means you're saying, I will review for this journal, right? Ad hoc is kind of more the one-off, that you're part of the pool of people who can review for the journal, and kind of board is more like, I'm putting your reviews first or higher on my list. And then for associate editors or action editors or editors, there's typically some kind of nomination process or kind of recommendation application process. And honestly, that's as much as I know, because I have not gotten there yet. But that's typically even more commitment to that journal. And it helps in a couple of ways. It gives you kind of prominence in the field, right? People know who you are. you know their work. And so as you're going for tenure or even full professor, it's kind of a status that you have contributed to the field in this way and are committed to the field in this particular way. Oh, another question. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
What are your thoughts?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, what are your thoughts on teaching online, online only in a faculty position? I think if you want a teaching-based position, I don't see what's wrong with that. Or if you want to teach, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong or different about online teaching versus face-to-face teaching. You want to be clear about the type of institution you're working for always. And one thing I'm particularly, I guess, thoughtful about, or try to be thoughtful about, is this institution predatory towards people of color? So is this institution taking advantage of students in a for-profit kind of way or in a nonprofit kind of way that is not committed to them actually getting degrees, but is more committed to getting people enrolled in the courses? That's kind of the only consideration, and I think that's across the board of all institutions of higher learning to consider, is this predatory towards the students or populations that I otherwise care about.
Thank you.
Yeah.